So we kind of know what the opening night roster is going to look like, and we know who will not be there, and that is Brady Tkachuk. And we hate to keep harping on this, but it is the thing that everybody wants to talk about around the water cooler in the city of Ottawa right now. And now it seems to have changed. All the reports, because that's the thing, we've all been speculating based on media reports. Well, I heard he turned down 8 years, $8 million, and he wants 8.4. He wants and now the latest is Tkachuk reportedly wants a bridge deal. I mean, this is all adding to the frustration of the fans, isn't it?
Yeah, I gotta believe, Steve, that if I was going into negotiations with Brady Tkachuk, I think I would have liked to have started, even though it's not necessarily what the team wanted, but it would have said, okay, let's start with a bridge deal and get the basic numbers in place so we're about 85, 90% sure on what the bridge deal is. Okay, are we good with that, Brady? You like that? Maybe we got to iron some things out later, but this is a good basis, a good starting point. Now let's talk the long-term deal. Now let's talk an 8x8 and whatever, work that out if we can. And if we can't, then it's just a matter of like put in a deadline. Okay, if we don't have it done by this date, then we're going to go back and revisit the bridge deal idea and iron that one out. And is that not what they did? Again, we don't know. You got stories out there, you got rumors, you got things that are supposed to be facts. Like, who knows? But I'd like to think that they would have had the bridge deal parameters in place a long time ago.
Yeah. It's tough because the fans are basing frustration and anger that seems to be ramping up as we go. They're basing that on the media reports, which change every week. And so that's a difficult thing. I mean, if I'm the Brady Tkachuk camp and I'm hearing some of this stuff, and if it happens that some of it's incorrect, I'd almost want to just let the public know. It's like, here's what they actually offered, because those who are on Tkachuk's side of things, they're playing the Melnyk card and how many guys that he's allowed to leave this city. I mean, at some point, Tkachuk might want to do that. You almost never hear it, of course. But if I'm the Tkachuk camp and all this information is wrong, and maybe they've only offered slightly better than what they gave Drake Batherson, I might say, you know what? Here's an announcement. This is what the Sens have offered. This is how they've behaved through this process. Could you ever see something like that happening with a player?
No. This will get done. It has to get done. I can't imagine him sitting out. I'm sorry. I can't see it. He's got to sign, and it's got to happen within the week. I firmly believe it'll happen. Like what's your assuredness rate right now? What's your positivity at right now? What are you thinking?
In terms of being in the opening night lineup?
Yeah.
I believe he will not be.
Ooh.
Because I see is two of the most stubborn sides. We know Eugene Melnyk and how litigious he gets sometimes and how he feels hard done by so frequently. You've done me wrong, and how he's, willing to take the PR hit for what he believes is right financially. And then there's the Tkachuk side. They're stubborn as all get out as well. So if ever there were a situation where an RFA would take it right up to the deadline, it's this particular situation. So I think we got another Nylander case on our hands, to be honest. That's where I'm at.
Holy smokes. That was right to the absolute 11th hour, 59th minute for Nylander, wasn't it? He was the day of, right? Wow. No, I gotta believe that push comes to shove, they will settle on a short-term little bridge deal and get it done. I believe that the bone of contention there is how long the bridge deal is. Obviously, the Senators want to buy a year or two of free agency, and the Tkachuk camp on a bridge deal doesn't want to give up any of those years of free agency. So I got to believe that the only remaining bone of contention here should be, if they've truly given up on a long-term 8x8 or 8x whatever, then I got to believe the only bone of contention involved with a bridge deal is the length of it. And hopefully that can get worked out. Even if somebody's got to blink first, it'll probably end up being the Senators.
It'd be nice if it was like a 2-year deal. Then I'd feel like, okay, there's still time to get this thing done. Maybe you could look at things in 2 years, see what kind of player Brady Tkachuk becomes. Because that's another angle of the long-term deal. We don't know the ceiling yet on Brady Tkachuk. It feels like the sky's the limit, but who knows? If he suddenly plateaus in the next 2 years, he's just the same 45-point scorer, well, now you know what he's likely to be. And I think you're taking these $8 and $9 million deals probably off the table. But the 2 year deal would at least buy you a little time versus a 3 year deal, which would walk you up to 1 year away from being a UFA. And I think at that stage, you almost have to trade him at the end of that contract.
Yeah, and I think like you brought into this the biggest problem with all of these negotiations, right? Is what's the ceiling at? How
Right.
good is he going to get, right? So that the problem becomes now we're offering. Let's say they have offered him 8 times 8, and let's say it ends up being a bridge deal of 2 years or maybe three. At the end of that, if he hasn't excelled and climbed and gotten better and better, then 8 times 8 is off the table, and that now you risk insulting him. Like you told me you were going to give me 8 million, and now you're only offering me 6.5. And your comeback is, yeah, but Brady, you look at your stats, you're not an 8 million player. You didn't live up to that. It's kind of like, thank God we didn't end up signing that, because you're not worth it. Now we think you're worth this, and that's an insult. And then what we know from the Tkachuk history, family history, like that would be just death right then. It would be over, right? Like
Yeah.
yeah. So you're probably right. You're looking at you're moving them out of town. Otherwise, it's 1 year away, like Mark Stone was. And now what do you do?
Yeah. Well, hopefully this would be a temporary measure, but the Sens obviously, and you would do the same if one of your star players was absent from camp and you weren't sure when you were getting him. You obviously have to come up with a plan B. You have to be ready for opening night with a left winger set to go on the top line with Josh Norris and Drake Batherson. Back on Friday night, Gregg, when the Sens took on the Leafs, Alex Formanton took that role, and he looked very good, by the way. 2 goals and an assist in that hockey game. However, DJ Smith has a different plan. He is going to go with Tim Stutzle, at least for the foreseeable future, maybe to round out training camp. He says it's exhibition season. We can do all the mad science we want at this point, but he felt like they haven't been scoring that much. So they're going to try Stutzle on the top line with Norris and Batherson. And I guess the question I would have for you as a coach, is it a bit too eggs in one basket?
Well, if Pinto's going to be the player that we think he's going to be, and if that second line is going to be, it looks like now Pinto with Brown and Paul. Not a lot of pure goal scorers there, but that's a pretty solid line. So I think maybe it's not all your eggs in one basket, as you're putting it, because that second line will do quite well. And I really think that no matter what you do in the third line, despite not looking as strong as they could on first line or second line, I think the Senators will have a top 5 number 3 line in the NHL with what they've got to choose from. The third line should be really good. The nice thing here is, like we talked about when Formanton played with Norris and Batherson, it's a whole other look, right? It's completely different than having Brady there. You put Timmy Stutzle there, you've got a whole completely different look now. Like you've got a pure goal scorer sniper playing left wing instead of the grinder mucker up and down winger bump and grind guy. That's a whole other look you're giving teams, and I think it'd be really interesting. I think those guys could really rack up some serious points playing together.
I think people who weren't watching the last game might say, yeah, but what about that winger who's going to smash guys? Well, you might have that in Drake Batherson. Man, did he look good in the last game. I mean, the Sens, they didn't play a particularly great game, but Drake Batherson had 9 hits in that hockey game, and he absolutely just smoked a few guys. Like we're not just, I rub you out against the boards and that counts as a hit on your NHL stat sheet. He wiped a couple of guys out in that game. And I mean, Batherson looks to me like a guy who really has an opportunity to be a power forward in this league, potentially. He's a lot bigger than I think people give him credit for. And now, at least in the early going here in this preseason, he looks like he's willing to use that size as well.
Yeah, and he's never been a shrinking violet, Steve. Like he has been a guy who's used his size and played a physical game. Maybe not, known for it. It's not his number one calling card that he's a physical, rambunctious power forward. But we know he has the offensive side to it, and we know that he's not shy. So to me, it's a natural progression for him to become even more of a physical presence to round out his game into that true power forward type player. Like, is he a 30, 35, maybe even a 40 goal scorer down the road? Is that what he projects out to be? I don't know that he's a 50 goal scorer. There aren't even that many left in the NHL, right? But he could certainly project out to a 35 plus power forward, a real good hockey player. I think it's great. I loved watching it. It was the only thing worth watching in that game. I couldn't stand watching it. All I kept thinking to myself was, how does this lineup lose to that lineup?
Yeah.
But he was the one bright spot, that's for sure.